The chaos of battle quickly overwhelmed Halcyon as he swung his halberd with every ounce of strength he could muster. The Geknosian's hand suddenly missing fingers as it tried to block the sturdy swing. With a stout kick, Halcyon sent the Geknosian stumbling backward into an android, who, without hesitation, ripped the lizard's throat out with its already gore-caked metal hands. Metallic Gauss slugs slammed into the armor from close range like brutal haymakers, making him stumble back as Drake's sword decapitated the offending Geknosian in a swift, brutal blow that swiftly turned back the way it came to parry a wrist blade. Halcyon swung his halberd in a downward arc at a Geknosian that charged him, splitting their skull open like a rotting squash. His heart was pounding. His mouth was dry. He was terrified, but he never stopped swinging. His arms were burning from exertion as he ripped the head of his halberd from the Geknosian's skull, only to get tackled by another one that had blindsided him. Halcyon felt his halberd leave his hands as he was slammed onto his stomach. A quick, painful punch to the back of his skull sent his ears ringing as he blacked out for a second. He came back to quick enough to feel the Geknosian get ripped off his back, vision blurry and nausea brewing in his gut. Rolling over, he watched as the giant samurai used the screaming Geknosian to bludgeon another one to death before tossing the limp corpse aside like it was an old rag. Halcyon sat up, dazed and disoriented as the battle raged around him. He could see the swordsman through his blurred vision, sword dancing through air, flesh, bone, and blood, as though they were all the same consistency. Geknosian helmets flowed open moments before they could effectively target the desperately fighting humans still left alive. The young man in the gambeson, Cassius, he remembered, was dancing. Fluid, graceful, and dainty movements sent a pair of weights connected by a chain slamming into Geknosian helmets and armor, making large dents and even dropping some like a hot skillet. The chain was hooked around a gracefully lifted foot, before a beautiful hop step propelled it with lethal force into a helmetless Geknosian's face. The samurai waded through the battlefield like a bipedal tank, Kanabo wreaking havoc on the armored Geknosians. The lizard's power armor was clearly several classes below the samurai's in protection level, as it warped and deformed from even casual blows by the samurai's great metal club. Head finally clearing slightly, Halcyon touched the back of his head, where a warm mess of wet hair greeted his fingers. He pulled them away to see the shiny crimson blood that now coated them. He tried to stand, but the world spun as he did. An android quickly grabbed him, dragging him away from the fight even as he weakly protested the action. However, it was quickly becoming clear he was no longer needed. The Geknosian forces had thinned considerably since they charged out from the barricade. The android leaned him up against Lucy's fallen chassis, the large agrodroid shifting slightly, showing she was still somewhat intact. From there, Halcyon watched as his forces and the swordsman's group decimated the remaining Geknosians. The fight, at last, was over. At least, he had thought it was. But there was one last enemy that had been hanging back. A loud, haughty whistle cut through the air, making everyone's heads whip towards the street. A human, body almost entirely cybernetic, with only their face visible on the front of a metallic skull. They carried themselves with confidence, an odd, simple, curved sword hanging from their belt in a strange wooden scabbard, with the edge facing up. A katana, if his fuzzy brain remembered correctly. The man's gaze panned over the group of battered men, women, and androids, before locking on to the swordsman. Their eyes wandered up and down the swordsman's figure, as the rest began to back away. An aura of bloodlust surrounded the cyborg swordsman, despite his calm demeanor. The cyborg made a dismissive gesture before speaking again, hands returning to rest on his hips. "All of you but the demonic swordsman may leave. The general sent me here for him." There was a tense moment of silence before the swordsman slowly depressed the button on the side of his helmet. Then, the swordsman's men suddenly just backed off. The old man and the Mongolian lameller suddenly appeared beside Halcyon, slinging their shotgun over their shoulder as they quickly ducked their head under Halcyon's arm. For a moment, the young leader was confused, asking, "What? Why are we—" The old man just gave him a look, one that sent shivers down Halcyon's spine before he spoke. "Drake's given us the order to back off and take you guys back to home base. He's going to try and buy us as much time as he can. This guy isn't normal, kid, And not just because he's a cyborg. He's the chosen champion of a god. You can feel it from here, can't you? Halcyon could still feel the cold, calculating bloodlust that flowed off the cyborg swordsman. Slowly, Halcyon nodded, heart beginning to pound as he realized their predicament. All right. Get us the fuck out of here. He was deeply unsettled by the fear in the old man's voice, letting himself be carried away by the old, shotgun-wielding man in the lameller. Drake held his sword loosely in one hand, staring at his opponent as the rest of the newcomers and his squad moved down the wide boulevard towards home base, giving the cyborg a wide berth. Letting them disappear around the far corner, he asked, "Who's your patron? I can tell you aren't just another swordsman, not with those modifications." The cyborg laughed jovially, casually drawing the sword at his side in one fluid motion, before dropping it into a low guard. My title is the Man of War. I'm sure you're smart enough to figure it out from that. Drake of the Pale Flame. Drake tightened his grip, the words resonating with his very soul in a way he didn't like. He gripped his sword with two hands in a peasant grip, staring at the rival chosen around the blade's keen edge. He could feel his hands start shaking as his system was flooded with adrenaline. This was a champion of war, another of the 7 primordials, and if this feeling in his gut was as right as it always was, the rival swordsman would be able to kill him with a single blow if he let his guard down. He dared not speak anymore, just staring his opponent down and waiting for their move. He didn't need to wait long. The Man of War shot forward as a blur, red lightning crackling around their curved blade as it swept for Drake's throat. Drake quickly countered with a block, sword bursting into pale flames as he pumped soul power into it. With an almighty clang! He was shoved back, boots scraping along the ground as the maniacally grinning Man of War whistled, impressed. The hit had sent vibrations rattling up Drake's arms, fear spiking his blood as he tunnel-visioned onto the rival. The Man of War shot forward again, blade cleaving down as Drake caught it against his swords, unleashing a feral kick into the cyborg's metal stomach, forcing him back a bit before breaking the bind and shooting a thrust for the cyborg's throat. His blade was quickly knocked away as a violent punch made stars pop in front of his eyes, before an impossibly strong kick to the gut sent Drake flying back into a brick wall. His breakfast was forcibly ejected onto the pavement, and the wind knocked out of him as he barely ducked a lightning-fast thrust that speared into the brick wall. Drake forced himself to roll away from the kill zone as the cyborg's knee shattered the wall where his head had been moments ago. The Man of War locked onto Drake as he ripped his sword free from the wall, lunging forward with a wicked smile and an ascending slash. Barely deflecting the slash, Drake growled in defiance as he landed a solid punch against the Man of War's jaw. He was terrified, tired, in pain, and fighting for his life against the war-born cyborg. The Man of War whipped a horizontal cut at Drake so fast he was forced to dodge backward. Even then, the sword's sharp blade sparked off his lorica, like flint on steel as it still made contact. He gasped in pain as suddenly he felt warm wetness pouring down his chest beneath his armor. His eyes widened as he watched the cyborg's sword absorb the blood on its blade. The Man of War cockily laughed before flicking their sword's blade. "Surprised your armor didn't stop it, boy? That's my gift. I can slice flesh without damaging armor. It makes collecting war trophies so much easier. Speaking of which, that is a mighty fine helmet you wear. I think I'll mount it on my wall with your head still inside." The cyborg's gleeful words chilled Drake to the bone as he managed to redirect a bullet-quick thrust, the Man of War's blade quickly being pulled back, before slashing upwards and forcing Drake to use his crossguard to catch it. The bind was broken before Drake could even think of what to do next, the cyborg feinting to the right, before striking him in the nose with the silk-wrapped butt of his sword. Drake stumbled back, eyes wide as that crackling red sword tip sailed for the spot between his eyes. His arms moved of their own accord, blade spinning around in an instant to smack the cyborg's sword tip away from his face as he leapt back instinctually, his heart still pounding, but his mind had gone blank. He was going too slow, trying to think and strategize about his next move. He didn't need to think about it. Just do it! Drake launched forward, catching the cyborg by surprise and forcing him back, as their swords met at the halfway point and bound. The cyborg threw a heavy punch that Drake simply swayed out of the way of, letting go of his sword with one hand and shoving the overextended fist to the side with his forearm. A vicious headbutt rattled his brain as he smashed his heavy, helmeted head into the man-of-war's nose, before twisting his sword free from the bind. The curved blade nimbly slipped past his guard and skittered across the side of his helmet, chopping off the top of Drake's ear and opening a wide gash that poured blood down the side of his face. However, the young swordsman couldn't feel it through the rush of adrenaline in his system, as his heart pounded with exhilaration. Without hesitation, he ducked a lightning-swift swing, before throwing a one-handed thrust that opened up a gash on the cyborg's cheek. The cyborg quickly threw a lateral slash that Drake nimbly, deftly swayed out of the way of, his own leaf-bladed bastard sword punishing the overextension by removing the cyborg's hand at the wrist in a shower of sparks and glowing blue fluid. The man-of-war deftly grabbed their severed hand and sword from the air, before backflipping backwards with a haughty insult on his lips. The words died in his throat as Drake's sword flashed through the air like a spear and embedded itself in the cyborg's chest, the pale flames slowly flickering out as blood mixed with that glowing blue fluid dripped out around the sword's blade. The cyborg seemed shocked, disbelief etched on their face as they dropped their sword, slowly grabbing the sword's blade where it stuck from their chest. A blank-eyed Drake slowly walked towards them. One arm was gashed open by the sharp protrusions on the cyborg's forearms, blood soaking through the titanium nanomesh backer of his lorica. Half his face was drenched in blood, and a piece of ear was stuck to his shoulder. Gripping the handle of his sword with his good arm, Drake tried to yank it free, but the cyborg firmly held onto it, staring up at him with the most bewildered look. You threw your sword! That's not fair! That's not honorable! I can't die to that! The man-of-war's voice had gone up an octave, like a spoiled child as tears rolled down their face. I've beaten thousands! You can't beat me with such a barbaric trick! You can't! You! The man-of-war's eyes widened as he saw the skeletal, cloaked figure rising behind the boy, scythe gleaming ominously as Drake's eyes slowly focused on the cyborg. He panted from both exertion and pain as he slowly whispered, "Too bad for you. I don't give a shit about honor. I only care about winning." With a sharp twist and jerk, Drake ripped his sword free from the cyborg's chest, the man-of-war's fingers getting cut clean off as the sword's fat-bellied tip pulled past them. The cyborg's last visage of the mortal realm was a young, battered, and bloody warrior winding up for one last cut.